Good afternoon. Let me first thank the organizers for inviting me to give this talk, especially Lex. Lex and I, we know each other, of course, and have been debating about these issues. And I love to be here and give my presentation. And I also have to say that my talk will be a very nice succession to Alan Finkel's, Maura Heine's, and Maria Leptin's talk yesterday afternoon and this morning. I think I can tell you straight away, I will focus totally on the systemic approach. I will advocate to you and will argue with you that most PhDs and most postdocs are decent people. Even PIs, principal investigators, are decent people. But if they are brought into a very complex, say, situation with shortage of money, shortage of and high competition, then things go wrong. And I will show you what we can do about it. And we is not only telling them what they should do, but also going to vice rectors and deans like myself, so I'm also guilty, like myself, that we have to change the system. This is why I'm here in Hong Kong today. And I enjoy the meeting very, very much already. I hope you enjoy my talk. Most of the times when I give this talk, I say my first name is Frank, so let's be frank. And I think it's very important that we really discuss what's going on in the laboratories, in the departments. And I'm from the medical center, I'm from biomedical, the field, and I will use examples. And most of the things that came from the biomedical field, where there was the problems were very visible and also very, pertinent. But there's also other fields like psychology, economics, and other fields where the same issues are abundant already. So this is my obsession. And then I have to move. Yeah. As the previous speakers already said, yes, the system has grown and has grown since 1945, more or less. And there's a lot of history, and you can find it on the website of several, institutes. But this is really 4 million papers a year. And of course, we are counting and we are not reading. So most of the times, people don't read, but just count articles from their institute. And as a dean, I also was mainly counting and not reading. And of course, then you have these problems. The social structure of science was really different in the 60s and even in the early 70s. Social control was there. And now, of course, the system is so big that people don't know each other anymore. Even in one institute, the dean doesn't know all his or her PIs anymore. And then you rely on, where something is published, references, etc., etc. So look at this slide. I will only show one of the slides. Begley and Ellis were already mentioned today. And I always go to the Lancet paper of January 9, to be precise, 2014. And some of the authors are here in the room. David Moore, he was one of the authors, but also Paul Glazio, he's also in the room. So these people pointed out in 8 wonderful papers, highly and very nicely researched what was going on in science. And before that, in October 2013, Economist, the magazine from the UK, already had an issue, how science goes wrong. And there you can also find a lot of these, arguments. I'm not going to dwell on that. I'm going to spend a little bit time on this slide with you. This is how I look at the field of science, and I use Bourdieu and Latour for that, French sociology. And in fact, by looking at this graph, you can see we are all, and this is also what the previous speakers have been using, but I'm just making a mental picture for you now. This is how I see it as a field. And of course, this all starts with for instance, my boss, he came from the United States. He had published very well. He got a good performance assessment. I'm now on the top of the slide. And then he got recognition, and funders gave him money. He hired me and other PhDs, and we were working like crazy in the laboratory in the 80s. It was really an American-type lab, and we were really producing data. And data were, of course, papers. And so we knew and we were taught how to play this game. And this is how the field, how you advance in the field. And I will think David Moore, as the next speaker, he will show you how career advancement takes place in such a field, in such a circle game, credit of circle. And this is really how it feels if you are the dean of a big medical center, what I was until 2 months ago, where, 1,200 PhDs are working in the trenches. I call that trenches, Lex, if you allow me. Where things are really hot and where people are in high competition. And this is how we look at the system. And you can see that in this field, this is an internal field like in Bourdieu's sociology, but of course, science is not there for science, as we have been hearing this morning already. Science is there for society. And so in this approach, in this field, in this credit cycle, so the outside world is not there. And on the next slide, I summarize some of the issues that you have heard before, especially from Maura Heaney, who has been discussing this in great detail, so I can be very brief about it. In this slide, I can show you, based on the positions in the credit cycle, where issues are. The main issue, of course, and being the dean of a large medical center, where you would think that we were all working to improve quality of life, healthcare, and also innovations in cure and care, their society is largely absent from credit cycle. So people who have been on boards of promotion, hiring, firing, say allocations of monies, grant commissions, most of the times all academics, of course, they are mainly looking at still, and this has been recently reported in Nature, they're still mainly looking at where did this individual publish? Is it in a high journal impact? How many did he or she publish? Did he have good citations? Hirsch index, totally forbidden, but still being used. And of course, amount of funding, also very important. And so John Ioannidis once at one meeting argued that some people do wonderful research and they don't need funding, but it doesn't count. Then it doesn't count. And it's not competitive. And imagine, funding is not funding. Funding from specific origins in Europe, for instance, from the ERC, has more standing than funding from a company. If Philips is paying something to do research on in Utrecht, it has a less value than we get an ERC grant. But we do the same science. We even do even better science with money from Philips. So you see how this all relates to the habitus of science, the mores, how we look at it. And this is the game we are all in. And look also down at the right side. Most of the papers still that we publish, and is our research. Our papers are behind the paywall, and we help the journals to get that going. And of course, there's a big discussion now going on. I will refer to that, but this is also totally, say, normal in this system. We are not making that data available. Even clinical data, which has an enormous impact in the field on patients. In the real life, they have to wait for 6 months to the embargo to run out. And at the left, we have heard it before from many speakers. This is really hyper competition. We're training many more people than we can accommodate in academia. But still, many people and most people are being trained to become an academic. And an academic means in the academic system, in university medical centers. I'm talking about biomedical centers, of course. And so this is still the idea. And this hyper-competition, of course, is going against the idea of team science. We heard a lot about team science. And of course, if we are looking at individual careers, it is not, to the advantage of an individual to collaborate with somebody else who is very close to him or her and is going for the same grants. Multidisciplinarity, but also diversity. So we are looking at a system where there's one specific type of research is being, valued more than others, and this goes against diversity. Think about low-income countries. I've been an HIV/AIDS researcher myself, doing a lot of research on issues that were very important in the West, but were of course the real issues in sub-Saharan Africa only came later. So this is really how it is. And to summarize this slide is really metrics shapes science. So the way we value science really makes our agenda. Why? Because people are strategically making choices about which type of research to engage in. And you cannot blame them for that because they want to survive. They want to do their thing. They want to do research. They like research. Researchers love research. And therefore, they are in a difficult and awkward position. And of course, it's novelty and quantity which are really very, very important and still looked at. Novelty is very important because if something has already been published once and you want to go on with that topic, then some of the reviewers say, yeah, this has been published before, and now these people are just going on with it. That's not so new and not so important anymore. But we have seen that, especially in the talks this morning, that we need people to pursue and to take a Nature paper to the patient, because a Nature paper doesn't cure patients. It has to be, say, taken on. And of course, very important is also, I'll go back one slide, very important is also to realize that this circle is about 4 or 5 years. So if you get your first grant and you are not successful in having 4 or 5 papers with your PhD in 4 or 5 years, your career is over. You're not making it to the next round, because they will not fund you, because you apparently were not good enough to play the game. And I think David will talk about it after me. And that's, of course, very important. And of course, short-termism, so really difficult questions. We heard it this morning already. Really difficult questions you should not take on, because that probably doesn't allow you to have a successful project in 4 or 5 years. That means, successful means 4 or 5 papers, good journals, etc., etc. So, and so people stay away from the real problems. Peter Medawar, who was a Nobelist, immunologist in the early days, he called science the art of the soluble. So you have to pick a topic that can be solved in 4 years. David will talk about it later on. And the other thing, of course, is universities are outsourcing talent management, and this happens everywhere. So we source out to journals, we source out also to funders. So the funders decide who will be the professor in Utrecht or in the Free University Medical Center where Lex is from, because those committees, they will give grants on personal basis to an individual, and then we as deans say, oh, but then he is also up for a professorship, which of course is awkward, because we know there are many people who never get that type of grants, but who are doing science which we really need. Because number 2, I already said, there are fields of science which are not very, say, competitive for Nature, Science and Cell, which we barely need that type of knowledge to do something about, say, healthcare or in innovation in healthcare. I'll give you one example. So there's a lot of research being done on stroke, how it happens, where it comes from, the whole pathology, a lot of biochemistry, medical imaging, etc., genetics. But studying how people after a stroke how we can learn them to speak again, which of course I'm really scared of, because it's the only thing I can do. So I hope that if I get a stroke, that there are people who are well trained, who are extremely good scientists and have excellent knowledge, can help me to speak again. Think about that type of stuff. And still, that rehabilitation sciences is not so very en vogue if you want to make a career in science. You think I'm exaggerating? Visit me in Utrecht and I will show you around. And then, of course, open science, fair data, sharing data, having your data in the right format. Of course, it's also not in the system. Imagine in this system doing reviewing, doing academic duties, being on committees and being, say, involved in working with industry to get your ideas, say, across to a real product that is not very, very, say, valued in the system. People are still looking at the classical academic products. And that, of course, should change. So I think, and I'm going to make a statement here today, I think that the transition to open science can help us a lot to improve quality, impact, and also integrity. And I think that is very important. And I specifically mention integrity. And the first thing is that, of course, people already started, and it has been shown before, DORA. You have seen that, the San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment. In 2012, people came together really in San Francisco, and they decided that we were just not valuing science in the right way. I'm not going to talk about it. It was mentioned. The speaker from EMBO EMBO was involved, and the speaker just alluded to this morning, and also Maura Heaney related to that. We were very proud when we had these discussions going in Holland that in 2014, it falls off the slides here, also the Federation of Universities in Holland signed the DORA Declaration. But signing a declaration is something different than say to all your committees, all your promotion committees, and David will go to that they should also stick to it, that they should not look at journal impact factors, that they should read and not count articles, and they should also decide on which articles to read. And of course, this is now only now really happening in Holland, and this relates to Plan S. And to give credit due to credit where it should go is that the metric tide, James Wilson and colleagues, but also the Leiden Manifesto, and also some of the stuff that we did before, but also Quest, a very nice initiative in Berlin, many of you are familiar with. There are many initiatives, Matrix, Stanford, there are many initiatives already where people are working on this and not only, say, thinking, but also going into action. And I think that is very important. The open science movement is something that, say, started early on, but for most of us in 2015, 16, came on board. How? I didn't show the slides, but in 2016, the Netherlands were the chair of the European, community, and there it was decided that open science should become the standard for all science in Europe. And then also incentive and rewards and the whole system change that is needed was put on the agenda by the then Secretary of State of the Netherlands. And I think we are still proud of it. Think about science, and we heard these arguments before, the speakers before. Science is not there only to make a career or to have a nice time. I have 5 minutes left. Science is there for society. And science is a complex, say, activity. It's not isolated anymore. This is really, it happens on the marketplace. It happens in between, and it happens to every, say, in every corner of society. And therefore, the transition to open science, look at this slide, it's about rewards and incentives. It's about open access. It's about the European Science Cloud. It's about Go Fair. It's about research integrity very explicitly, and also about skills, and finally about public participation. I'm not going to say a lot about Plan S anymore. It was discussed this morning, and yes, there are issues, sure. This will be a very complex transition. It will take a lot of time, not 1 year, and we have to deal with it, and we are going to deal with it. And the new guidelines came out last week, and we know, of course, what happened. In the meantime, in Europe, several groups of top professionals have been engaged in thinking about what will happen if open science is going to happen in Europe, in your country, in your member state, also in Holland. And so a group of people, HRM, people from universities all over Europe, have been putting a list together. And this list, you can see, reminds you of what Maura Heine this morning showed. And we all, more or less, everybody goes to the same sort of ideas about how are we going to incentivize and reward a scientist to be able to do the proper things, to be integral, and not only because they like it, but also that we help them to do the right things and to choose the right topics. So I will make this presentation available to everybody for you to see later on. We did an experiment, as Lex already said in the beginning at the introduction. We did an experiment, and we are now using for 3 years this scheme. This scheme can be found on the internet if you go for Science in Transition UMC Utrecht. And I can tell you, this is hard. It is really difficult for a committee to not think about where did this individual publish, Nature, Science and Cell. Or is radiation or radiology, is that also a very nice journal if somebody discovered that you can do MRI and you can do radiotherapy at the same time? And then you can do real-time, say, radiation of a tumor, which is really what you all want if you get cancer. That's what we all want. But that type of journals has an impact factor of 4 or 5. And as an immunologist, I can tell you, we didn't go below 10. Because below 10 Lex, you were a loser. Of course, this is, of course, cynical and ironical, but this is, of course, how people look at that type of scheme. Look at the scheme. There's structure, there's academic leadership, there's the process, which is also very much in Maura Heine's talk. It's very much about how are you organizing? How did you get your question? Are you in the right context with your question? Do you know the stakeholders? Do you know people who are waiting for your data to come? It could be scientists, it could be clinicians, it could be patients, it could be the parents of a child with an oncological problem. So posing the right questions is very, very important. Most of the times people just work on a problem because they have worked on that problem for a long time already. I've been on many committees where that was the main argument for somebody to submit a grant proposal. Of course, design, conduct, analysis, very much like what is all very, very important for research integrity. Eventually, of course, it's also outcomes you see at the bottom of the slide. We are now, trying to install, and we are working with this system. I'm nearly done. We are working with the system, and And we have been, publishing about it, which of course is something we also need to do. But the most important thing is what Lex has been saying. We try to do it in a very large pilot in a large medical center. And it's hard, I can tell you. And we have people from the Centers for Science and Technology Studies in Leiden, Sarah de Rijke and Paul Wouters, and those and their colleagues, and they are now studying this intervention in our medical center. So they are fly on the wall in a committee. Imagine the committee, the doors are closed, the curtains are drawn. Yes, before we had this new system, we would appoint Mr. A, because he has nature, science, cell. Yeah. But now we have to realize that there are other parameters that we also have to look at. Oh. And then somebody says, yeah, but this guy Miedema, he has only 1 year left, so we probably go back to normal, isn't it? After he leaves. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we are trying to do. This is a real transition. And most of us, and I confess, I was also totally addicted to journal imperfectors. My oldest son, he is 30, and he says to me, Dad, when I was 12, and you had a paper in Nature or Science, because I did HIV/AIDS research, we knew at home. How pathetic is that? I still like my oldest son. Because Lex, he's right. He is right. This is what it is. It is really very, very difficult for people who are addicted. And of course, we offer methadone and all kind of stuff. But this is really very... So Plan S is, of course, it's about money. But it's not really about money. Plan S is about, we're not going to use imperfectors anymore. And David, you're going to show us the committees, especially in biomedicine, but also in the sciences, but also already in other sciences, are addicted to journal imperfectors, and it's very, very hard. So if you say to a committee, you're not allowed to think about journal imperfectors anymore, that's saying to an heroin addict, you're not allowed to think about syringes anymore. It's very complicated, I can tell you. I was cured. And then you see at the bottom of my slide, Jochem Zuiderwijk, who's in the audience, he will give a talk and a poster about their experiences with our, experiment. So in the end, open science will cure a lot. Of course, it's not a panacea. There will be a lot of issues, but it will especially do something to the engagement and involvement of stakeholders. We go for inclusive indicators. I think that's the right word, indeed. We go for everything that is an academic product, and it can be not only, articles, and of course, fair data sharing and open access publishing. Finally, this is, of course, I realize this is the problems of open science. It will be complicated. It will be complicated. And of course, there is resistance. I already explained to you why. And that is very understandable. So we have to deal with it. This is a transition that will take a couple of years. Some people say 10 years. But it is worth our while, because I think at the organizational level, we will improve the academic culture. And this is very helpful for the PhDs, for people who want to make a career in science and want to do something real for the world. Because science, ladies and gentlemen, in my view, is for the good life. I thank you very much.
You didn't disappoint. Thank you very much. It was a wonderful lecture, but you're still on the hook. There is time for some questions. Please line up behind the microphone. If you have a question, say your name, pose your question, and try not to start your own lecture. While you move to the microphone, my question to you would be, Frank, it is difficult, and that you explained very clearly. Is there a place for journals to help you? Can journals help you in this process of change? Because they seem to be addicted to counting citations as well. Is that the case?
Let's be frank. I think in this system, of course, journals are also have a strong interest. I think we have to be very honest about what is the role of, institutions, deans, vice chancellors, rectors, journals, funders, in this scheme, and they are different, and they should not be confused. So I think we should be very honest and discuss what do we expect from journals. In the Nature last week, Paul Wouters and colleagues discussed also an idea of how to evaluate the quality of journals. Some people say, why do we need journals? We can just have repositories and we can do all that type of stuff ourselves. That's a debate. And I think that for the journals, it's to show, and they're already, of course, gearing up, to show that they have something to offer to this system, to this a place in the new circle, in the new credit circle. Definitely imperfectors, that they are off. That will be sure. So there will be a role, but we have to really rethink how that role will be. But also funders. I think funders, they started to realize some 10 years ago that if you are a cancer foundation, their committees were just looking at a project like my thesis project in the early 80s. So I had very nice publications. So the committee said to the board of the Dutch Cancer Foundation, grant 775 or whatever, was wonderfully done because it has given that type of papers. But there was no patient on the board. There was no patient on the review section who said, but what about, this is income, this is not outcome. So we really need outcome for patients. And that is what it's all about. So if you go to South Africa, I see you sitting, sir. If you go to South Africa, the science that they need there is something completely different than the science that we need in Amsterdam. And so think about driving from Cape Town to past Galicia and go to the airport. So there are totally different social problems and medical problems and health problems that should be addressed. And that is what we are going for. I think and that's really what open science can do. We go back to the 70s, Lex. You were there.
I was. One question. Please go ahead.
Andrew Gray from Auckland.
No questions?
Over here.
Over there.
Oh, sorry.
Look in that direction.
So fully agree that the way that we assess academics, or the way we are assessed as academics, is nonsense, and you're proposing some new systems. What are you going to measure to assess whether the changes that you propose, which sound really good, actually achieve good things?
Can you say that again, the last?
So you're proposing a new system for assessing us, we being academics. What are you going to measure that tells you that the changes that you're making are good ones?
Yeah. This is also a question for Zuiderwijk, which is on my slide. But it's definitely, are we now having a different set of professors that are being, appointed? The gender balance, for instance, but also totally other topics. And the first impression is yes, we are now succeeding in promoting people to a professorship or to associate professors, which had a very difficult time in the early days. Are we going for, a different agenda setting? And yes, also already in Holland, but I didn't put it in, the Health Council came to the same conclusion that metrics shape science, and we are now steering for more research outside the walls of the medical centers, more public health interventions early on to prevent people from going to hospital instead of just doing high-tech research on people who are already sick. And so prevention, public health, and that will be the new things. And they have suffered in this system. So there's really already a change. And also at the systemic level and also at government. Of course, you can imagine that the Dutch, Department for Health, they love it. Because they, of course, want to have better outcome and better life, and not only papers for scientists.
Okay. Thank you. Last short question, last short answer.
Have you considered the possible negative impacts with this combat against impact factors? There are many bad journals that publish many bad papers, and the people who publish bad papers in bad journals will be very happy to hear that impact factors are no longer of interest.
Yeah, so I'm going to be very strict to you and pointing to you now. I'm not against quality. Quality is there, and quality is in the eye of the beholder, you know. So quality is not Nature, Science and Cell. Quality is something that you read and understand. I can tell you, we have a very famous scientist, which is Hans Klevers. They publish every week, or nearly every week, in Nature, Science and Cell. And he said to me, yeah, Frank, but because I published in Nature, people think I'm a good scientist. No. We have been reading his stuff, and therefore we understand that Nature loves to have it. So, and predatory journals, that's something we make a list, and people already made a list of journals that should be forbidden for scientists to go to. And funders, they have the power to do it, no problem, but it should be executed. So it's all about quality.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.